Okay, let's start this one more time. My name is Bonnie Perez Ramirez, and I'm the director for Partners Resource Network's 10 project. PRN is a nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of parent training and information centers, or PTIs, and we serve parents of children and youth with disabilities 0 to 26 years of age. We also serve youth self-advocates 14 to 26. So PTIs here in actually all over the United States are funded by the U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs. In Texas, there are 4 PTIs, and the PEN project serves families living in ESC 9, 12, and 14 through 19. So it's all of West Texas. Our mission is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. All of the services that we provide our families, they're completely free. I'm going to go ahead and put our information in the chat box, and then that way, if you need anything, we can reach out. Feel free to reach out. I am so happy to host again Miss Allison with Consolidated Planning, and this one is a real. I say this every time, but it's because they're all always so good. So please help me welcome Miss Allison, and go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bonnie. We could hear you just fine that time. That was perfect. So again, Allison Schaberg here with Consolidated Planning Group, and we are indeed happy to be partnering with you again. We do a lot of webinars on a pretty regular basis. So if you're coming back, you've heard us speak before, we're glad you're back. If it's your first time, we're glad you're here. We are going from 12 to 1. We'll be done by 1 o'clock today. We do want you to put your questions in the chat box. Bonnie's going to watch that chat box for me today, and we're going to answer just as many questions as we can. Consolidated Planning Group, we are a holistic special needs financial planning firm partnering with families just like you who want to plan for the future of their loved one with a disability, as well as their own future when we might be spending 25 to 35 years in retirement. We are nationally certified as Social Security advisors and members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. Our whole firm is nuanced in planning for special needs so we can help you on your journey. So today, what we are going to be talking about is an ABLE account. In the chat box, I did put my contact information, and I also put our YouTube channel in the chat box as well, because the YouTube channel is, the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel is where all of our past webinars live out there. So if you've missed one, you can go out and find the one that might be appropriate for kind of where you are on your planning journey. There's over 200 webinars out there on that YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to that for free. So, you know, a lot of, you know, some of the topics like that you might find out there are special needs trust, guardianship, SSI, Medicaid, Medicaid waivers, the list goes on and on. But today, what we're specifically talking about is the ABLE account and whether or not you need one and when they might be useful for you. So when it comes to the ABLE account was a law that was enacted in 2014, and it's under the code of 529A. So we've heard of 529C, 529 for college, and it's a similar account as the 529C, but it is basically an account that is specifically for an individual that has a disability. And so basically how this account works, the beneficiary is the account owner, and the income earned in the account is not taxable. And although contributions are not deductible, so it's basically tax-free contributions and distributions. But the key thing about an ABLE account is an ABLE account is one of 2 places that you can have money above and beyond the Medicaid, means test, which is $2,000 in the person's name. And you can have money in an ABLE account that's not going to be counted against them for SSI and Medicaid purposes, okay? So there are, at least 40 programs all across the U.S., and it doesn't really matter which state. You don't have to use your home state for your ABLE account, but there are some very specific special contributions and distribution limits that apply when we're thinking about an ABLE account, okay? So first things first, when it comes to opening up an ABLE account, even if the person is older than 26 years old, their disability had to begin prior to age 26 to qualify for an ABLE account. The owner of the account is the individual with the disability, but contributions can be made by anyone, and it is limited to the annual gift tax exclusion. So currently for 2022, that amount is $16,000 a year, and for 2023, that amount is $17,000 a year. Funds held in the ABLE account in excess of $100,000 would cause a person to disqualify for SSI and Medicaid. Okay, so one key thing that you want to know is although you could have up to $500,000 in an ABLE account, if your loved one is getting SSI or Medicaid, you never want the account balance to go over $100,000. This is why some people have both an ABLE account and a third-party special needs trust or a first-party special needs trust, because a special needs trust is another place that we can have money above and beyond the $2,000 that won't be counted against them for their means-based test. So when it comes to an ABLE account, distributions for qualified disability expenses are not taxable, and earnings on distributions for non-qualified expenses are subject to ordinary income tax and penalty. And a 10% penalty. So if you don't use this for a qualified disability expense, then you could be taxed and penalized. There's tax-free growth in the investments that can be changed by the participant twice a year. And you have the ability, as far as the investments, to be as conservative or as growth-oriented as you would want them to be. And the accounts can be rolled over to other family members who are eligible beneficiaries. So if we have more than one a family member in our household with a disability that started prior to age 26, there is a such thing as a rollover for this account. But the one thing that is important to understand on an ABLE account is that states can claim reimbursement for expenses paid by Medicaid. This may be something that you've heard of before, of like a Medicaid payback or a Medicaid clawback or drawback. I've heard them called all of those types of things. So there is a such thing as a Medicaid payback in an ABLE account. So one of the things that we really like to talk about when it comes to an ABLE account is why. Why should we have an ABLE account and a special needs trust? Why might we need both? Okay. And so when an individual with a disability is getting SSI is designed to pay for food and shelter. Okay. So an ABLE account, again, this is a place where we can pay for qualified disability expenses. But what are these expenses? So the bottom line when it comes to, it's very non-restrictive when it comes to what we can pay for out of an ABLE account. And the key language is if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, we can pay for it out of an ABLE account, okay? But the cool thing that we can do with an ABLE account that you can't do without a reduction in a special needs trust is that you can pay for food and shelter out of an ABLE account without that 1/3 reduction from SSI, okay? So right now, SSI is $841 a month. If you're getting a 1/3 reduction, you're probably getting about $561 a month. And that is something where if you're getting that lower amount, you need to submit a rent agreement showing that the individual is paying rent, and then they'll increase that up to the higher amount of the $841 per month. But again, the point is monthly debt service, food and shelter can be paid for out of an ABLE account without that 1/3 reduction. The other cool thing is, there's kind of this long list, but again, if it could be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, we can pay for it out of this account. So some families have a 529C set up for their loved one, but they're not sure if that child is going to go to college. They may or may not go to college. You can pay for higher education out of an ABLE account, along with all of these other things that would be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, Whereas if you keep that money in a 529C and that individual doesn't go to college, if you take that money out other than for higher education, you are going to be taxed and penalized. So the ABLE account is going to give you a little bit more freedom to move. Maybe it is, a transition program. It could be assistive technology, legal expenses. It could be attendance services, medical copays. There's so many things. You could actually even pay for a vacation for the individual with the disability and one caregiver. Don't get crazy. We can't take the whole family on a vacation out of the ABLE account. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to keep, in the kind of a rundown of the expenses of what the ABLE account has been paid for. Really, at any time, the IRS could request that you submit documents that those expenses have been for disability expenses. We've not ever had anybody ask to prove that, but we do suspect that at some point they are going to ask for that. So it is important to keep your documents straight on what you're using those funds for inside of an ABLE account. So one example of why somebody might need an ABLE account is they're getting SSI, they're getting $841 a month, and they're not spending that down as quick as they need to. And even if the SSI is, being given to them, they still can't have more than $2,000 in their name. So it is a legitimate move. So if your loved one gets their SSI and they're getting close to that $2,000, you can move some of that money over to their ABLE account and it won't be counted against them. And you should do that prior to them going over that $2,000 limit, okay? So the next example is a list, and it looks like a longer list. It's really not. It's just kind of the way the slide is shown. These are items that a special needs trust can pay for, okay? But the deal with the special needs trust is that it really can't pay for monthly debt services on food and shelter without a 1/3 reduction to SSI. And another important characteristic of a special needs trust is a special needs trust can have an unlimited amount of money. You can literally have millions of dollars in the special needs trust that won't be counted against them for SSI and Medicaid purposes, where you can only have up to $100,000 in an ABLE account. So obviously the special needs trust is going to be needed to fund their future care when we're gone, okay? So that's why you might need both of those instruments. And then another thing is, when it comes to our life insurance or our investments or how we plan to fund the future care for our kids, we can't leave that money to an ABLE account, but you can leave that money as a beneficiary to the special needs trust for the benefit of said child. So having said this, it's important that I mention, and I mention this a lot, so if you've heard it again, you're hearing it again, I apologize. But it is really, really important if our kids are getting SSI and Medicaid that we do not name them specifically as a beneficiary on any of our accounts that we have. Any of our accounts, this would be stocks, bonds, mutual funds, life insurance, any type of investments, bank accounts. We do not ever want to name them outright as a beneficiary. And if you have done this, don't panic. If you've done this, you're in the 98th percentile of people that have done this, because what a lot of people do is when it comes to beneficiaries, if you're married, they name the spouse as the beneficiary, and as the secondary beneficiary, or sometimes called the contingent beneficiary, they say, okay, well, we're going to divide this equally amongst our kids, right? Well, we don't ever want to name a minor child with a disability or without a disability as a beneficiary, because when we do that, if something happens to us while the child is a minor, that money's going to sit in trust for them until they turn 18. And when they turn 18, they're going to get all the money. And we don't want to name an individual with a disability outright as a beneficiary, because if we do, when we do that, they're going to have more than $2,000 in their name and they're going to disqualify for SSI and Medicaid. So we want to maintain their eligibility for SSI and Medicaid. And so the ABLE account is one place that you can do that. And the special needs trust is another place that you can do that. So this is an example of some of the things that that the special needs trust cannot pay for without a 1/3 reduction to SSI. So if a special needs trust pays for rent or monthly debt services, you're going to see that 1/3 reduction to SSI. So it's kind of an important place to note that. So when it comes, I want to just jump back to the beneficiaries just for a moment. So I think if you're taking notes, first things first, I should have mentioned that you guys are going to get a copy of today's slides, so you don't have to write everything down. You're also going to get a link to the recording. But as far as the beneficiaries are concerned, if you're taking notes, I would just write down, check my beneficiaries, check my primary beneficiaries, my contingent beneficiaries, and anything else like that, check them. And don't forget to check former employers. If you have an old 401k or 403b or old pension plan, check those as well. Now, what happens if somebody accidentally leaves your loved one money in their name? So instead of leaving it to the third-party special needs trust for the benefit of John Smith, for example, they left it directly to John Smith. Grandma and grandpa love their grandson. They didn't know. Their financial advisor doesn't have a background in special needs. They didn't know. Basically, what happens when that happens is you're going to have to consult an attorney, and they're going to have to set up a first-party special needs trust to get those funds directed to a first-party special needs trust. And a first-party special needs trust does have a Medicaid payback. So if we take a disciplined approach and really look at this and do this on the front end, you can have money directed to a third-party special needs trust that does not have a Medicaid payback. So that is what we certainly prefer, is the best way to go about doing it. And we also suggest, in light of that, to have those intentional conversations with any of your aging family members that might be leaving substantial assets, so that way they understand how to leave it to a third-party special needs trust. I do see a question in the chat box. So we wouldn't list our child on any beneficiary forms. No, we would not. We would, again, you would need to have a third-party special needs trust, and it would be, in that example for our loved one with a disability, it would be to the third-party special needs trust for the benefit of the said child's name, as opposed to the child outright. So if you have done this, if you need to check on this, you can fix it. Don't panic. And like I said, you're not alone. That's why we talk about this on a pretty regular basis. Every day we talk to somebody about this because it's an important thing. And, there's 250,000 advisors, financial advisors in the U.S., and about 125 of them are nuanced and special needs. So they don't know these types of things about preserving benefits for SSI and Medicaid. So it's a common mistake, and it's an easy fix, and it's a fix that you can do for free. If your beneficiaries are through your employer, you can contact your HR department and ask for a change of beneficiary form. So that's one way you can do it. And then if you've got contracts outside of an employer, investments outside of an employer, you just contact that company and you ask for a change of beneficiary form. Now, granted, you do need to have the special needs trust set up to be able to name the third-party special needs trust for the benefit of the child, or at least have wording in your will to have a special needs trust created upon your death. But those are all things that you can fix. So again, you can fix for free. You can simply request a change of beneficiary form. And what my recommendation is in the meantime, so let's say for a moment you do not have a third-party special needs trust that's kind of on your radar, you're going to get moving on that. You can go ahead and change the beneficiary for now. It doesn't cost you anything to change the beneficiary. You can change the beneficiary as many times as you want to. I would take your loved one with a disability off completely if you do not have a special needs trust in the meantime until you get the special needs trust, and then you can change it again to reflect the special needs trust once you get it. That would be my recommendation. And again, don't forget to check those contingent beneficiaries, or sometimes they're called a secondary beneficiary. And basically how this works, a contingent beneficiary is second in line. So for instance, if I'm married, I have my spouse as my primary beneficiary. I pass away, but my spouse is already dead and gone. Then the money goes to my contingent beneficiaries. That's basically how that works. So just wanted to talk about that a little bit so that way you guys can put that on your radar to be checking on this. I want to mention that we have, webinars, like I said, on a variety of topics, and we do have a complete webinar on, college planning and higher education for individuals with a disability, how to fund it, whether it's some different programs out there. These are just some different programs that that we know are out there. Lynn University is actually in Florida. It's not in Texas. Some of them are colleges, some of them are universities, some of them are like trade schools where they're learning a trade. We don't work for them, they don't work for us, but there are a lot of great programs post-high school for individuals with a disability. And as a reminder, yes, your 529C can pay for higher education, but your ABLE account can pay for higher education as well. So keep that in mind. Okay, I actually see a question in the chat box, and it says, my son is set to receive retro pay on SSDI, which will be deposited to his Rep Payee account. This might cause the balance to go over $2,000. Can we transfer the money to his ABLE account to bring down the bank balance? And the answer is yes, you can. And the other thing that I appreciate you putting that in the chat box for me today, because there is often times where we get like back pay from SSI or SSDI. And when they give us back pay, you have 9 months to get that out. Like they don't expect you to get rid of it like overnight. So you can move it to the ABLE account. But when you get that back pay and you get that back pay letter, it will tell you how long you have before it counts against you. So it's really important that you pay attention to the date of the letter, but it's usually like 9 months. It's not right away. So that is a good point. Now, one thing that she mentioned was SSDI versus SSI. A lot of our kids are going to get SSI first. The SSI is a means-based program. We have entire webinars on this. It's for the disabled and the indigent, less than $2,000 in their name. It comes along with Medicaid. But when we have a child that has a disability, whose disability started prior to age 22, not 26, 26 is for the ABLE count, but started prior to age 22, our kids have the ability to be covered under a parent's record under the childhood disability benefits that was formerly called disabled adult child. And so basically when a parent turns on their Social Security retirement or Social Security disability, the child basically flips over from SSI to SSDI, which was the case of the lady in the chat box, right? They switched over somehow to SSDI. And some people call that a celebration because the SSDI amount is higher. And after 2 years, they get Medicare. They're dual eligible for Medicaid and Medicare. And what they think is that when we switch over to SSDI, that we don't have to maintain those Medicaid limits. And if you don't care about Medicaid, then that is true. You don't have to follow that $2,000 guideline anymore. But the one thing I want to make sure that everybody does understand, most families need to continue to maintain those Medicaid guidelines. And the reason why is the waivers. So we have waiver programs in the state of Texas, and all states have them. But our waivers, for instance, you may have heard of them: HCS, Texas Home Living, Class, Community First Choice. Those are just to name a few. We have entire presentations on waivers. These are all Medicaid waivers. So you have to maintain your Medicaid eligibility to be considered for these waivers in the future. So if you're getting a waiver or you hope to get a waiver in the future, you're on the waiting list, you've been on a long time, you hope to come up on that waiting list, you're always going to need to maintain your Medicaid eligibility. So in that example, the ABLE account is a good tool for you to use. The Special Needs Trust is also another good tool for you to consider. So choose wisely, and just know that if you lose that Medicaid eligibility, it is a big deal. And it's not just, well, we lost Medicaid and who cares because they have Medicare, or who cares because they're covered by our group health insurance as well. There's a lot more issues that can come out of it long term as far as losing the Medicaid eligibility. Okay, so this is a list, and this is just a short list. It's not, we have lists, and you can email us, excuse me, to get more information. And we've had entire panels on post high school options, day, transition, residential, those types of things. They all live on our YouTube channel. When we have a loved one with a disability, if they have care needs for the rest of their life, not just yours, we do recommend that, families kind of look at some of the different programs that are out there, tour them, get on their waiting list and things like that. So there's choices. What we're trying to avoid is that post high school, that our loved one, and some of you may already have kids that are way past high school, but we're trying to find, places, transition programs, places where they can learn or they can, have a job or different things like that. So we encourage families to look at these. And we also say this from a perspective of, hey, you're of sound mind and body now, but what if you're not? What if you're not well? What if you're not here anymore? What if you don't have the capacity to care for your loved one? This is kind of a marathon, not a sprint. So not just looking right here, right now. And a lot of families, we're looking right here, right now. I call it wheels on the bus, wheels off the bus at my house. Sometimes we're just trying to get the wheels back on the bus and rolling forward. And so, we're kind of right in the moment, but what happens is it sneaks up on you. And, I've literally had, people reach out that say, hey, listen, I'm in my 80s and I'm not getting any younger. I'm not getting any healthier. And I don't know what's going to happen to my kid when I'm gone. And I'm worried about this. So, my point is, you don't have to do it right now today, but start looking at these things, having a plan. What does that plan look like? What is your hope? Is it the 18 plus program? Is it a transition program? Is it a license, a certificate program, a university program? Are they going to go to work? Maybe they're going to work with vocational rehab through the Workforce Commission, or is there a such thing as working with the Department of Labor on a registered apprenticeship? The point is, there are a ton of options out there. Not everybody goes to college, and that is completely okay. But what are they going to do? We just want to avoid this. They finish high school and they come home, and that's it. Other than going out to eat with the family or kind of doing a few things with the family, they don't have a daily schedule or a weekly schedule where they have check-ins with other people, where they have community and relationships that they're building and growing. So that's what we want to think about there. So we've talked about a lot of topics. We've talked about our YouTube channel, and we are going to send these slides out today. And this, you can click this link here, and this is going to take us to our upcoming webinars that we have probably between now and the end of the year. We have webinars every week. They usually run from 12 to 1. We usually do about 3 a week, sometimes more. But you can register for those webinars. They're always free. They always run from 12 to 1. And then you can attend any future webinars going forward. And like I said, after the fact, they live on our YouTube channel, so you can check them out there as well. These are some of the things that should be on your special needs planning radar when it comes to planning for your loved one. And again, there are YouTube videos on all of these things. At Consolidated Planning Group, we are, because we're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, we actually have a specialized software. It's a proprietary software, and it's the only software out there that does a Social Security analysis that takes into consideration a child that is eligible for childhood disability benefits. This software is awesome because it tells a family exactly when and how to pull the trigger on their Social Security to maximize benefits for the whole house, to include the spouse, to include the childhood disability benefits as well. And it will tell us in dollars and cents what different decisions might mean. Like, what if you turn it on at 65 versus 67 versus 70? What will that look like to you financially? And it actually tells us just right down even to the month and year of when you should turn it on. So if you haven't done something like that, that might be something that should be on your radar. About 80% of people actually file their Social Security wrong. And what that means to you is money. It means if you file it wrong and you've made a mistake in filing, then it's over your lifetime. It can be very significant, the cost that it's going to be to you. The other thing that we help families do is determine future care cost estimates. We spend time describing the differences between a special needs planning advisor versus a special needs attorney or an estate planning attorney. And I like to say that we're the money, they're the paper, and we're the money. So the legal documents, the special needs trust, the guardianship or alternative guardianship, those are all things that you're going to need to have a conversation with an attorney about. We're happy to make referrals. We have referrals of qualified attorneys that's what they do. They work with special needs families all across the state to work on those documents. But we're the money. So a lot of times families come to us and they say, listen, I'm hoping for the best, but I want to plan for the worst. And I need to plan on how much do we need to go in to our special needs trust for our loved one. And quite honestly, a lot of people are concerned about this, because when we have a loved one that is going to have care needs the rest of their life, not just the rest of our life, it's almost like a third retirement bucket. So, in retirement, we're probably going to spend 25 to 35 years in retirement. And so when we have that third retirement bucket, we've got to plan accordingly to be able to fund that trust in the future. So those future care cost estimates that we do is going to get down in the weeds of how much money is needed to fund the trust. What are we looking at here? And we also do various scenarios of what if small, medium, and large, because we believe in hoping for the best and planning for the worst, right? So what if your loved one needs some care? Maybe they need an attendant, they need some help. What if they need full care or full residential or somewhere in between? Maybe it's a home that you have provided, but you want to have a person that works and helps. So we're able to put that all together for you guys. So these are just, like I said, just things that should be on your radar. Check out our YouTube channel for those, and kind of listen to the ones that might be appropriate for you. I see a question in the Q&A. Okay, it says someone reached out to me and I wasn't available. How do we set up a consultation? So at Consolidated Planning Group, we do work on a collaborative basis. So these are members of our team. And so, but we do work together. So whether you have an initial consultation with myself or anybody else on the team, we all, have the same background and license and things like that. But when we work together on your case is basically how that works. And so all of our consultations, we always offer an initial consultation free of charge, because we know when we have these webinars, people have personal questions or personal things that they may not want to share in a group setting. But our consultation is designed to get to know you a little bit better, understand the planning that you have done so far, do some listening on what is important to you going forward, and then we will share with you a little bit more about who we are, how we work, and the various doors that you can walk through with Consolidated Planning Group. And then together we'll determine if it makes sense for us to talk going forward. But we're certainly happy to meet with you, learn more about your situation. We're never here to rain on any good planning that a family has already done. I call those building blocks. It's the foundation. So what you already have in place, what you've done outside of your employers, it's the foundation, it's the building blocks. What you have with your employers, it all goes to your overall long-term plan. And so we seek to understand, we call ourselves a holistic special needs planning firm. And when we say we're holistic, we're a little bit different in that way. And the reason why is we need to know the whole big picture. Whereas a lot of firms, they just want to manage your assets. they don't have provisions to provide, future care cost estimates for our loved ones with a disability. They don't have the Social Security analysis and those types of things. So we're a little bit different firm in how we work, and certainly happy to meet with you. So in this slide, you can open up your phone and you can just scan your camera over that, and that'll take you guys to a calendar where you guys can schedule your initial consultation, your private personal consultation. So having said that, I know that we're a little bit early. Nobody ever cares if you're a little bit early, so that's okay. And we have reached the end of our presentation today, but I would like to open it up for any additional questions that anybody might have. I know we've talked about a lot of stuff. Okay, I see Bonnie's contact information out there for the PIN project. Thank you, Bonnie, for that. And so having said that, that's all I've got. It's certainly been a pleasure to meet with you guys today. And we look forward to meeting with you again soon and partnering with you again, Bonnie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I would like to remind everyone that for December, we won't be having, the PEN project won't be having a webinar with Allison, but we are scheduled to have one in January on saving on Medicaid expenses. Is that what it's called? Yeah, how to save on medical
expenses. Yes,
so
that's a good one.
And put the link for the registration in the chat box, and you will be redirected to an evaluation. So we would greatly appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much, Allison, and everyone who joined us. I wish you all an awesome Thanksgiving and a new year, because I won't see you until January.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.